Welcome to this best of edition of Issues and Ideas with Chris DeBello.
Well, we do like to procrastinate, don't we? We do it with paying our bills and taxes, going to the dentist, repairing things around the house. Politicians, they do it as well with budgets, other issues placed in front of them. Education for our children, that should never, ever, ever be weighed down by any kind of procrastination. Now, thanks to new laws here in New Jersey, early education through preschool has just become a lot more accessible for a lot more families. Our first guest today is here to tell why this is important for our children as they set off into learning and building a future for themselves. She's the Executive Director of Preschool Advantage, Nancy Bangiola. How are you today, Nancy?
I am very well, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's good to share good news about education here in New Jersey. And the website for Preschool Advantage, by the way, learn more about their program, what they provide, preschooladvantage.org. Let's just take a fast look at the immediate past before we get to what lies ahead with this new law. What have the challenges been for access to preschool? How difficult has it been for families who wanted to get that opportunity?
Oh, it's extremely difficult, Chris. Preschool in New Jersey can cost upwards of $18,000-$19,000 a year for a 3- and 4-year-old. And for families who are earning, in the neighborhood of $55,000, $60,000 a year, that is just unattainable. And so they can't access the high-quality preschool that would really benefit their young learners. And so they turn to, wonderful, safe providers, or sometimes, a family member will take care of a child just to make ends meet, but it isn't the same as that high-quality preschool that really makes a difference in an early learner's experience.
Which brings us to the legislation that Governor Murphy signed into law this past Wednesday. If you want to look it up on the State House website, it's S3910 A5717. Requires the State Department of Education to provide annual grants that expand access to preschool for 3- and 4-year-old children in districts that don't currently have a program. And I bet, Nancy, my just saying that probably surprises people. They thought preschool programs were widespread, if not entirely available through New Jersey. But the truth is quite different.
That's right. It's been available in some districts for a long time. In the Abbott districts, it's been available for over 20 years. But throughout the state of New Jersey, it has not been uniformly available in the terms of by way of public education. So if you wanted your child to attend preschool, you had to pay for it if you lived in Morristown or in Chatham or in Madison, New Jersey. And those expenses were pretty high. So many families just didn't choose preschool for their students. But over the last 10 or 15 years, New Jersey has started to move toward universal preschool. It had set a goal to have universally available preschool education for all students in the state by 2030. And it started just methodically moving in that direction, beginning with communities where the rates of high and free and reduced lunch were higher than in other areas. So, for instance, in Morristown, about 15 years ago, we began offering public education for 3- and 4-year-olds through the state grant. But now the law that the governor just signed 2 days ago makes that available to any community in New Jersey. There will be a process to onboard that. I'm not sure that that'll be universally available tomorrow in every school district. But this law does codify that path forward.
And it's something you don't want to rush it anyway. You want to make sure the program that's going to be instituted is done with a strong structure, not through a haste and mistakes found later that you have to correct.
Absolutely true. So high quality preschool, as they roll it out slowly and methodically here in New Jersey, has tremendous impact for early learners later on in their educational career. They have found in many studies nationwide that children who have access to high-quality preschool tend to stay out of discipline later on in their academic career, tend to finish high school successfully, tend to go on to 2- and 4-year colleges, have higher rates of performance later on in standardized testing, and those studies bear out. But where students have only access to kind of mediocre, if you will, early education opportunities, you don't see those same effects. So you really want to get it right and do it in the best way possible for these young learners.
So Nancy Bangiola, who is the Executive Director of Preschool Advantage, presschooladvantage.org, their website, and you are listening to Issues and Ideas. This funding also plays into another way to assist families, too, because as we've been hearing so often, and granted it'll be over time, but there are now going to be new work requirements for recipients of both Medicaid and SNAP programs. So with parents, especially single parents with kids, this will alleviate, okay, now I have to pay for daycare, so I have to go to work to keep my benefits. But in this case, if there's preschool programs available, there becomes that ever popular win-win situation.
Absolutely. We fund 100 children every year. We fund their preschool education, and the families we serve are in exactly that situation. Mom and dad are both trying to make it work, but someone has to be there with that young child. So when we fund preschool education, both mom and dad can return to the workforce, and what we find over time is that the whole family is elevated. We remove a huge source of stress from the family's life, and they can move forward in a more productive way in their own community. So it's truly a win-win. The child wins, obviously, because they have access to this important early learning opportunity. But mom and dad also win. The whole family wins because the situation is so much better for all. So I think that will help families who now have this added pressure, as any supports they're receiving are tied to their ability to work at least part-time. Now mom and dad know this child is in a safe and really important learning opportunity while they're at work.
I used the word daycare before, and I think that brings up an important point we have to differentiate. Yes. Because a lot of the critics of this try to make preschool sound like a daycare. It's all play and fun. It's all fluff and no stuff. Preschool is not daycare. There is actual learning going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Daycare is wonderful and children are safe and loved and cared for there. That's fine. But preschool is so important because it comes with both trained, learned teachers and an important curriculum. Did you know that you learn 85% of all you'll ever know by the time you're 5? The young learner's brain is exponentially expanding, gaining thousands of words, learning about math, relationships of numbers and spaces, learning that how to tell stories, understand stories, follow stories. These are the foundational components of learning. And the most important thing that the 3- and 4-year-old learns is that other people in the world have feelings and needs that are as important and as big as their own. They learn to share and be part of a community. This is a critical feature in the rest of their learning career and, frankly, in life. And so the learning that happens in a high-quality preschool is very, very different from daycare. It's critical for the early learner, and especially an early learner from a family that has challenges economically.
I talked to an expert some time ago now about the need for college students to be taught critical thinking. Yeah. With that just magnifies the importance of preschool, because what you talked about and between the social interactions, the raising of social awareness, the being interconnected with other kids, and understanding different cultures, different ideas. I mean, critical thinking can start 3, 4, 5-year-olds, so that when we see this default that exists now up until the high school and college years, over time granted, but all that could be brought closer and closer to the early years of learning as opposed to trying to catch up in the later years.
Absolutely. And the other thing that happens in those early learning years that's so critical and impacts later learning is a thing called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the idea that when you're little, for instance, you know you can't tie your shoe yet, but I will learn. So many of our teenage children right now who went through school in the pandemic are frustrated and kind of feeling stuck, a little bit depressed, really struggling emotionally. And part of that is that feeling that they can't quite tackle it. How are they going to get past this big challenge? The success of doing that at 3 and 4, self-efficacy, I can do it myself, is something that carries through the rest of their learning. And so the opportunity to practice that and be taught that by a wonderful teacher with important and well-thought-out curriculum is critical.
Again, for you listening, if you want to look up the facts of this new law for preschool in New Jersey and full-day kindergarten as well, S3910, A5717. You can look those up at the State House website. Learn more about Preschool Advantage, their website, presschooladvantage.org. She is our executive director, Nancy Bangiola. Nancy, thank you for the advocacy, the awareness that you raise through your work and your efforts, and thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. We're so excited.
Halloween means fun times for families. That includes the kids, the parents, and, the pets. Now, if you're a new pet owner and want to include your dog or cat in the party, do you know where to turn to for the best ideas? And while it's a fun time, the excitement could cause you to overlook some factors when it comes to safety for your pets as well. For the ideas and answers that will keep the fun loud and large and, more importantly, safe for pet families at all points on Halloween, my next guest joins us to be your guide, or being the pet trendologist and host of the radio show The Pet Buzz. She's also a constant source of pet-friendly information through many TV and social media platforms. Charlotte Reed, how are you today, Charlotte?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be back with you. It's been a while.
It has indeed. I always say if you make it on the show a couple of times a year, that makes you a regular guest. But I've been amiss with you, and I apologize for that. And we can make up for a lost time here. MyHalloweenPets.com, and we have some other links for Charlotte over our homepage as well, because there are ones you want to bookmark if you are a pet owner, and when you have questions, especially this time, Charlotte, because again, for the new pet owner, Halloween, how does that fit in with pets? Well, if you look at the stats, a lot of people are spending a lot of money on Halloween with the pets.
They really are. I mean, believe it or not, Halloween spending has increased $1.6 billion this year, and people are spending $0.7 billion in pet costumes. I mean, that's a lot of pet costumes. And, it's interesting because with the way the economy is, like everything else, pet costumes cost a lot more money. For example, and that has a lot to do with overseas shipping and manufacturing, as well as transporting the costumes here to the United States. So if you're going to know what you're going to spend. I'm going to say the average spend is going to be anywhere from about $15 to about $27, somewhere in there. And then you get, the really more expensive, a lot of the licensed costumes can be as high as $49. And then for people who really want to compete in those costume contests, they're spending $200-$300 having things made by these pet designers. So it's a really fun time of the year, but it can be an expensive time of the year.
I guess the challenge for the non-pet owners is let's count the number of pets who are dressed to look like Taylor Swift this year.
No, it's going to be all about the Barbie, Chris. It's
okay.
Going to be, gals of all ages love Barbie. And, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so people are going to have, the Barbie, the pink costumes and the various shades of pink, and maybe a blonde or wig or so. The gals will love that. Halloween really is an expression. And, it's one thing if you have kids because you'll dress the dog kind of similar to the kids. But if kids are out of the house or, it's you're a first-time pet owner with no kids, it's really about expression. It can be anything, an ode to your local community. It could be an ode to news, movies, politics. So, like, for example, big congressional hearings in August. What were we talking about? Ghouls, goblins, and aliens, right? So the spaceship costumes, also the alien costumes are going to be popular, as well as the astronaut costumes. Seems like every time we blink our eyes, there's another jet going off into outer space. So those are going to be really popular. Star Wars superheroes, still popular. We love them, but and that's really has a lot to do with Disney and Marvel, with the superheroes. But they're mainstream now. Everyone's looking for the next big thing. So, I saw something. I didn't own it, but I saw it and I had to buy it. And I showed it on TV this past week in Las Vegas. I saw a pickleball costume. Had to have it. Bought 2 of them, and changed my costume lineup so my dog could wear. Why? Because pickleball is the fastest growing sport in this country. The costume had the headband with the crazy hair. It had a ball in one hand and a paddle in the other, and everybody loved it. I was on NBC in Vegas. So it's just all about the fun,
We're talking with Charlotte Reed, host of the radio show The Pet Buzz, constant source of pet-friendly information, many TV appearances, our social media platforms, myhalloweenpets.com, along with the links we have in addition over at our homepage, and you are listening to Issues and Ideas. Mentioned in the intro, Charlotte, how we get caught up in the fun. We might get a little sloppy with paying attention to things. And when it comes to our dog who we love, we often can leave open a real high risk for their personal well-being, their health, and their safety. What are some of the things we have to really remember to watch out for? And in a way, does it even compare to when we have a young child around?
It really does compare to the young child around. I mean, you know this because we've talked about it for years. No chocolate, no candy with xylitol, no raisins. These young, healthy moms, they all want, to give good, healthy candy, which is raisins. Raisins are bad for dogs. So the boxes are small. Now they have vanilla-covered raisins. So somebody might say, oh, it's got yogurt in it. It might be good for dogs. So, there's tons of Reese's Pieces, Kit Kats, Milky Ways. Keep those out of reach of your pets. Also, when you're decorating, we've got candles. We've got glow sticks that the kids like to wear. You also want to have that spider webs. Cats love that, and also the flickering lights. You want to have those costumes sized appropriately, not too heavy, especially if you have snub-nosed dogs who most of the time these days, due to bad breeding, have smaller nasal passageways, so they have a difficult time breathing. And they don't, and with the temperature fluctuating, you don't want to get them overheated. But here's the things that you need to know, and I'm going to give you some recommendations for some products.
All right.
Number one, door dashers. Door dashers are those dogs who can't wait to get out of the door. The doorbell's ringing. There's holiday hubbub. The kids are screaming. The minute the door opens, you turn for the candy bowl. They're out the door looking for a safe place, quiet place to hide. So one of the things I always recommend is calming chews. Now, I don't necessarily recommend CBD because there are not enough studies done. And you don't know how your dog's going to react, right? So Vitality makes these great calming chews. They're pheromones. The dog sniffs it first, so it goes up into the nostrils and reacts with the brain. And then it calms your dog down. I like it because you can recognize the ingredients: L-tryptophan, melatonin, chamomile, things that you would take yourself. Also, if your dog does get out, whether he's out with you for Halloween, which I don't recommend, by the way, because a lot of dogs freak out, not only with the costumes, but all these big decorations everybody has. A GPS collar is great, but they're expensive. They're pushing $200, $250. Not every American can afford that. So there's one called Tractive GPS. It's normally $45, but on a good day, it's $35. And what I really like about it, since I have toy dogs, toy dogs can wear it. Most of those GPSs, they're not available for small dogs and cats. So for $35 on a good day, you can check out Amazon or Tractive GPS. You can find that GPS collar, and the subscription is $5 as compared to much more. So a great way, and it also acts as a Fitbit. This way, you can track your dog in real time if he gets out of the house, right?
Absolutely.
Also, last thing that I love, Yummy Bones. They look like spooky bones. They're no artificial flavoring. There's no artificial coloring. They come in peanut butter, chicken, and, of course, everything tastes better with bacon. You know that, Chris, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I love them because they're individually wrapped, just like we said. Parents want individually wrapped candy, but pet parents want individually wrapped treats. So if you have a dog that comes to the door, boom, it's a wrapped treat. Don't give it to the dog. Give it to the parent because you don't want that dog to chomp on your hand. Goodness gracious if he bites you, but that's good for a dog. And they price out about $1.50. You're not going to buy that many because you're not going to get that many dogs who are coming to the door. The other thing is, it's also that Yummy Bone. It's great for the dog that's home in a crate trying to calm down. Dogs chew for relaxation and to reduce stress. So that yummy bone has dual purpose. I mean, it's good. They like the taste, but it also can calm them down. It's a nice size treat, not too big, not too small, but it's long lasting. So I love that. The other thing you want to do, if you're planning on going to the pet parades and all the jazz, right? Please bring your own water bowl. Do not let your dog drink out of the communal water bowl. Make sure your dog is vaccinated. Make sure he's wearing his flea and tick products. And if he doesn't feel well, leave him at home. You don't want him getting sick, or you don't want him spreading any disease.
This is why Charlotte's the go-to person, especially for new pet owners. But even if you consider yourself a veteran pet owner, you're always in the learning process, and you even learn, too, how your pet communicates with you so you can respond to their needs and show them the love that you say that you have for them. You can find out more about Halloween specifically, myhalloweenpets.com. Over at our homepage, we have links to Charlotte's various social media platforms where there is a wealth of information for you, the pet owner, and, of course, her radio show, The Pet Buzz. Charlotte Reed, you are indeed the pet trendologist, the queen of Halloween. We thank you for the work that you do, the education you provide, and we thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Chris. So happy to be back with you, and happy Halloween, everybody.
This past Monday, Donald Trump, with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Dr. Oz by his side, advised pregnant women not to take Tylenol. Made quite a few incorrect claims about autism. Also promoted a drug as a treatment for autism, but Trump had promoted all this as, quote-unquote, having the answer to autism. Many believe that instead, he's created more questions, hesitations, even concerns, which might wind up increasing the rate of autism in America. Joining us to examine the claims made versus the realities is the Executive Director of Autism New Jersey, Suzanne Buchanan. How are you today, Suzanne?
Good. How are you?
Good to have you here to talk about this with truth and facts instead of, well, I'll just leave that off to the side. AutismNJ.org. Find out more about the work and the programs and how you can support Autism New Jersey. Oh, so where to begin here? Well, let's start with Tylenol edict, and he's reinforced it with social media posts. Pregnant women take Tylenol for fevers, like most people do. And I'm looking at research here that if you don't resolve your fever as a pregnant woman, you're putting your baby at risk. So where this is making it sound to not take Tylenol to protect your baby, sounds to me like you're telling someone not to take Tylenol and wind up endangering your baby.
That's exactly right. I mean, our read of the research, as well as many medical groups across the country, have shown that Tylenol is safe in pregnancy, and of all the few options they have, it's one of the safest and should always be taken in the smallest dose possible under the direction of a healthcare provider.
That's the thing too with blanket statements like they make in cases like this. Every person is going. It's almost like what we say with autism. If you meet a person with autism, you met a person with autism.
Right.
You can't do a blanket statement with healthcare either. It's going to depend what your doctor specifically tells you as an individual.
Exactly right.
Are there concerns on the part of your organization that, because unlike what we've seen traditionally with the FDA, they'll take an inordinate amount of time to make just a simple label change on a product, whether it's over the counter or prescription. Everything's getting fast tracked where it's a full expectation by next month. Paraphrasing here, the side of the Tylenol bottle is say, keep out pregnant women. Is that going to be a concern? Because if people don't have the right guidance and confidence in their caregivers, that they're also, as I said back in the introduction, this is going to wind up increasing the risk of autism with the steps that women are being advised or told to be taken by those who are less than knowledgeable when it comes to medicine and certainly autism.
I think that's right. I mean, you just said it, right? People have to be as knowledgeable as possible. And with access to so much information, it can become overwhelming. So that's why we at Autism New Jersey take the time to read through the studies. If the studies are more medical in nature, we talk with our medical colleagues to make sure we have a full understanding. But we at Autism New Jersey are here to help parents every step of the way understand the information that's most important for their child and their family so they can sift through all of the information, whether it's information or misinformation, and come to a decision or at least be more informed so that they can talk to their healthcare provider.
And they tandem this with the promotion of a drug that's usually put to use for side effects of certain kinds of chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. This was it was approved by the FDA, the Corvarin, and this is being promoted as a treatment for autism now, which, as a layperson, not a scientist, although through connections with organizations like the Muscular Dystrophy Association for decades, I've spoken with medical researchers. How can you arrive at a treatment for something you don't know what the cause is, meaning autism?
So the theory there is that there is a folate deficiency in the brain, and leucovorin can provide some of that folate. The first step is for researchers, honestly, it's not on us yet, it's still on the researchers, to do more large-scale studies to see if leucovorin is safe and effective, and we're talking about children here, right? So we have to see if it's safe and effective for the general population as well as for children. The second step is for parents to talk with their children's healthcare provider about how to test to see if the child does have a folate deficiency. If that is the case, then the healthcare provider may prescribe leucovorin. There may also be a host of other considerations. So overall, the science is very premature. We need more evidence that it's safe and effective, and it still goes back to your individual conversation with your healthcare provider.
Doing background for this segment, there are numerous researchers who are saying leucovorin is promising. Now, promising is a very different concept than a definite treatment, and people make the argument it's technically it's a B9 vitamin. It's a derivative of the B vitamin, and if someone wanted to go this way, there's certainly a large number of natural ways to get that to get the B9 leafy greens, beans, and lentils. If that's the path you want to take, as opposed to going with the belief that, well, you can take a whole lot of B9 or leucovorin in this case, and the body is at least supposed to kick out whatever is excess. But again, that's probable, not likely. That's not where you want to go with medical science, at least from what I've been led to understand through many years.
Right. I mean, the idea that something can't hurt is untested, and especially untested in children who have communication difficulties and might not be able to tell us about the side effects. I mean, sometimes too much of a good thing is no longer a good thing. So that's why at Autism New Jersey, we put together a real simple heuristic. We put together green, yellow, and red light categories for the different interventions, and I'm using air quote marks here, yes, interventions that are marketed to the autism community. And leucovorin is right in that yellow category, right? There might be some preliminary data. It might be a good idea, but we just don't have the hard science yet to tell us that it's safe and effective.
Right, we have time with Suzanne Buchanan, who's Executive Director of Autism New Jersey, autismnj.org, their website, and you are listening to Issues and Ideas. This all took me back in time to 1986, again referencing MDA. The researchers found the gene that caused Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is the most common neuromuscular disease, primarily with boys, and they thought, got the answer. No, that was just the beginning. That's what's led to all the studies of proteins and exons and protein creations, to where now some treatments are finally being developed. So again, I go back to the Donald Trump and RFK Jr. pronouncing cures. In your work, have you heard already? Do you anticipate hearing from women, okay, there's a cure. How do I get it? What do I do?
We have heard from some parents. We're also hearing from pediatricians and other healthcare providers who are not experts in autism treatment. So we'll be putting together some information for parents and healthcare providers to give them the facts so that they can go back to their regularly scheduled lives.
And for you listening, again, there are an appreciable amount of studies on leucovorin. To what effect, again, it depends on the individual. I saw one father talk about if he had to put a number on it, maybe a 5% improvement in his son's communication abilities and ability to focus. Another mother, had a larger view of how it was helping. Again, Suzanne, to give, I don't want to call it false hope, but to magnify the realistic potential, I think is unfair to the families of children and young adults on the autism spectrum disorder.
We never want to give anyone, especially the autism community, false hope. And we really approach it as a best odds scenario, right? What are your best odds? And the more information you have from more reliable sources, the better the decision you're going to make and the better your outcome. So that's why our helpline, 800-4-AUTISM, is available to everyone and anyone who wants to contact us to talk through their personal situation.
And that's the key part, too, personal situation, and ask questions, because there are a lot of experts, and even better, more questions you ask, the better understanding you have of understanding what's right, what's fair, what's realistic, and what is best for your child and your young adult, and for yourself as a family, what you're dealing with here. Because, Suzanne, if you just take one question, one answer, and you run with that, you might be running into a wall as opposed to the express lane.
Yeah, that's why information and connecting with other parents and professionals is so important. We have our annual conference coming up October 16th and 17th in Atlantic City, and one of the keynote addresses is going to be on the complex causes of autism. In fact, we did a series back in May, a 3-part series. It's free to everyone. It's available on our website, looking at the genetic progress, the environmental toxins, and then the brain development and how all of these things intersect. So there's a lot of information through our organization, through other disability organizations, and I strongly encourage parents and anyone who cares about people with autism to reach out to us and get connected.
And one way to do that is through the website for Autism in New Jersey, autismnj.org. Priorities when it comes to medical science or any science is always facts and findings, not conspiracies and preferences. So what you heard this past Monday, that was certainly the latter as opposed to the former, and the path you want to take as a parent, as a patient, is always with the facts of science, not with the wishes of those calling themselves scientists. Find out more again about Autism New Jersey, autismnj.org. She is our executive director, Suzanne Buchanan. Suzanne, thank you for providing the foundation people need for making the right decisions and to filter out what is unnecessary and focus on the needed, necessary. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to reach your audience. You're helping us fulfill our mission, so we really hope to hear from people. Thank you.
Many lessons can be found and absorbed from studying even recent history. Those lessons are magnified when the person presenting the story of that history was actually there, such as the case of my next guest. As the Abraham Accords reach their 3rd anniversary today, we're joined by a person who was there before, during, and after what many thought was impossible, but yes, it was accomplished. He provides behind-the-scenes view of the story in his book, Let My People Know, The Incredible Story of Middle East Peace and What Lies Ahead. He served as Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor to the U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Aryeh Lightstone, how are you today, Mr. Lightstone?
It's a special day, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
It is a day to celebrate with still more work to do, which you address as well and Let My People Know. You can follow Aryeh at Lightstone EA on Twitter. We have a link at our page as well. You can also pick up his book, which, again, Aryeh, just to have history from the inside as opposed from the outside looking in, what do you think is the most valuable lesson that someone could possibly come to an understanding about with the Abraham Accords through reading Let My People Know?
I think the most important lesson from the book is how incredibly special the United States of America is. It's funny that I had to go to the Middle East to understand that being born as an American is the single greatest blessing that somebody has probably ever had in history. When the United States of America leads, we can create incredible things. I remember growing up, I was told I won't be a brain surgeon and I won't do Middle East peace. So 1 out of 2 is not bad. These were sort of the impossibilities that people couldn't contemplate, and that was really just a deficiency in understanding the greatness of the United States of America. And when the U.S. led, we were successful in 5 peace treaties in 123 days, starting from 3 years ago today. Unfortunately, in the 3 years since then, the only peace treaty that has been brokered in the Middle East is a reconciliation between Saudi Arabia, a good friend and ally of the United States of America, and Iran, the exact opposite of that. And the reason why that deal was brokered, it was brokered by China. There are a lot of losers in that situation, but the biggest loser is the United States of America.
We'll get into that a little bit, too, because that foretells what could be a wrong turn that could come ahead, again, which Aryeh writes about and let my people know. But let's go back to the starting line. What created the belief that the plan, this idea, would, if not succeed, at least move forward to some degree versus the decades of what we saw fail time after time after time?
So here's where I saw it, and you know, Jared Kushner, President Trump, Mike Pompeo, David Friedman saw it from a completely different angle than I saw it, and so, you know, I'll give all the credit in the world to their worldview. But I had a very interesting encounter with a fellow named Maoz, which was his code name in the Israeli Secret Services, and his job was to develop relations with countries that Israel did not yet have relations with. And there's a whole slew of countries that Israel has security and intelligence relationships with that if you look at them at the United Nations or in Washington, D.C., they'll never even give each other a second glance. They don't have formal relations. And I remember Maoz came back to me after a trip that he took to a specific African country, and he said, Aryeh, there's something different. And I turned to him and I said, what's different? He said, they're not looking for the latest weaponry or intelligence or security, but they're looking for coding academies so that way their people can figure out how to become part of the startup nation. They're looking for food tech and ag tech so they can go from worried about tomorrow's breakfast to being able to plan out an entire year of sustainability. And he said, once they view Israel as the solution and not the problem, there's a chance. And the U.S. ran with that. And whether it was recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel or opening up our embassy in Jerusalem on May 14th, 2018, things that had been promised since 1996. Once we stood closer with Israel without a vacuum, without a gap, other countries who want to stand close to the United States of America realize that that path can go through Jerusalem.
One of, I think, the most overlooked aspects of the Abraham Accords, it's an agreement Israel reached with, let's call them enemy nations, although the cooperation has significantly improved in those relations. It's an agreement where Israel didn't have to give up anything.
That's exactly correct. The beautiful part about that is, again, Israel was not the problem. Israel was the solution. And that's a major shift from foreign policy that the Trump administration introduced that, unfortunately, we're reverting on this. And I'll just be, brief history. In 1967, there was the famous Six-Day War. Israel was attacked or preemptively attacked because they were about to be attacked by 5 surrounding nations. In stunning fashion, they quadrupled their territory. Since then, they made peace with Egypt, they made peace with Jordan, and those were cold peaces. And essentially it was an agreement that Jordan and Egypt were not going to send more of their young men to die because Israel was a stronger military force. And they gave up an enormous amount of land in order to have that happen. The rule from there was that the Palestinian superpower was the other 80-plus Arab Muslim majority countries, and Israel's superpower was the United States of America. So the U.S. would be close with Israel, but it couldn't be that close because it would risk a relationship with these 80 other plus countries. That was the lens that the United States of America looked at the Middle East. If only you can resolve the Israeli-Palestinian problem, everything else will fall into place. That was wrong for so many different reasons. The Shia-Sunni conflict has nothing to do with the Palestinians. Iran and Saudi, nothing to do with the Palestinians. Iraq, nothing to do with the Palestinians. And all of our focus was on resolving this very challenging issue. When President Trump shows up, Jared Kushner, Mike Pompeo, David Friedman, they turn it on its head and said, wait a second, there's a new Middle East that we haven't paid attention to. Let's go listen before we preach. And they went and they listened and discovered that the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, we're all looking to create a better future, and part of that better future is a closer relationship with the United States of America, and you can't have a closer relationship with the United States of America in the Middle East if you're not close with our number one ally, the only democracy in the Middle East, Israel, and that changed everything.
Talking with Aryeh Lightstone, his book, Let My People Know, The Incredible Story of Middle East Peace and What Lies Ahead. Follow Aryeh on Twitter at LightstoneEA, and you are listening to Issues and Ideas. Looking forward now, let's start with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is it's looked at as a good agent, a bad agent in that region, depending on what reasons you're looking at Saudi Arabia. Realistically, is Saudi Arabia able to take the steps forward to make it an inviting, peaceful existence and mutually beneficial existence between that country and Israel?
So the answer to that is yes. The lexicon in the Middle East, and especially around Saudi Arabia, has pivoted from will they ever to when will they. So will they ever make peace in the Middle East to when is the right time for them to make peace in the Middle East. And this is a lack of an understanding by the American people in general of Saudi Arabia. And what's important to know is Saudi Arabia modernizes itself, and a critical component to that modernization and leadership in the region is peace with Israel. They've admitted as such publicly. As they do that, as Saudi Arabia sort of joins or even leads part of the next century, 1.5 billion Muslims face Saudi 5 times a day. So that influence cannot be underestimated. So when Saudi makes peace with Israel, when Saudi gets closer to the United States of America, the trickle-down effect on Islam across the world is incredibly meaningful. And so the Saudi-Israeli normalization or peace agreement, when it happens, not if it happens, but when it happens, has the ability to be one of the most transformative experiences of your or my lifetime if it's done correctly.
So with that in mind, and what you mentioned, too, regarding how the Palestinian issue is not the one and only issue, let's turn to the current White House administration, because when it comes to the Middle East, they were basically handed the winning Powerball ticket when it comes to this issue. How have they spent that capital, or are they making the mistake, which I hear Democrats make so often, again referring to the Middle East climate as an Israeli-Palestinian situation? They look at it in that narrow scope versus the wider picture that the Abraham Accords helped us all see and better understand.
Yeah, I mean, here's a point of enormous frustration. I'll say the following thing. I wake up every morning and pray that President Biden will be the greatest president of my lifetime, because that's a win for the world. It's certainly a win for me and my family. We're Americans. When America succeeds, we succeed meaningfully. And part of that is the Middle East policy. The fact that the administration chose to take away a winning hand and to play a losing hand because of politics, to me, is very, very dangerous to America. And what do I mean by that? Our friends and allies around the world, all of the people who made peace during the Abraham Accords, not being recognized and elevated for the efforts that they did. So explain to me why there should be other countries waiting in line to make peace for peace. Other countries are going to wait in line to get paid in order to make peace, because they believe that there's a Republican foreign policy and a Democratic foreign policy. And that's, by the way, why the Chinese were able to broker the Iran-Saudi reconciliation, because whether any of them like the Iranian policy or they don't, the Chinese policy or not, they know it's a Chinese policy for the next 50 years, so they can plan on that. To be able to have the whiplash from Obama to Trump to Biden to who knows what, even when they know it's a winning hand, is very, very disappointed, because they were our allies, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, etc., were convinced that making peace with Israel should be an American ideal, not a Republican ideal or a Democratic ideal. I'm sorry for the long-winded answer on that, but I'm very passionate about that. But even more disconcerting is just this past week before the weekend, it appears as though the United States of America paid a $6 billion ransom for 5 Americans to be released from an Iranian prison, but not even brought home to America as of this moment. to be brought under house arrest, and to elevate the Iranian kleptocracy, funders of terror, with $6 billion is incredibly harmful and very dangerous.
Well, it's not even just elevating. I think it's more deadly than that. It's empowering them in a variety of ways. We saw that, too, with the nuclear arms agreement going back to the Obama administration. As I said back in the introduction, learning about history is great. When you learn from someone who was in that history as it was being created, that's an opportunity you dare not miss, and you cannot miss when you get Aryeh's book, Let My People Know, the incredible story of Middle East peace and what lies ahead. A lot still lies ahead. A lot of it might be a lot more positive than a lot of people, especially career diplomats, might be thinking right about now, too. You can follow Aryeh on Twitter at LightstoneEA. Aryeh Lightstone, you are a preserver of truth and facts, and you help us understand what does lie ahead for the future and what we can do to become a part of a positive future in a very important part of our world. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the conversation.
It's always hoped that when God's word is taught, it's heard and lived by remembering it. Now, the last part is what discourages many people, remembering. People who hear, of course, want to remember what they hear, but when they see a pastor rattle off scripture verse after verse off the top of their head, that can be discouraging, because those who are seeking God's word to wrongly believe, I'll never be able to do that. I'm here to tell you that you can. Eventually. It does take time, takes study, takes repetition. Pastors you see and hear, they didn't come to that Bible knowledge overnight. Instead of being discouraged by those pastors, learn from them. Here's what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 13, verse 23. But he who received seed on the good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Might be asking, well, why should I know his word? Well, because it's your one and only way to know Jesus, who is your one and only way to know God. Let's turn to John chapter 1, verse 14. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, I'm not saying that you need to memorize the entire Bible today. I'm not even suggesting that you start with something like Psalm 119 or even the lengthy prayer of Jesus in the garden before his capture, which you can and really should study. That's in Matthew chapter 26, verses 36 through 46. Those are goals you can progress to over time. I want to share with you some of the short verses in the Bible that deliver important understanding, which you, I think, can easily remember. Let's start with 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 16. Ready? Rejoice always. Told you we're keeping it short. We're being reminded to always be encouraged and faithful no matter what we're confronted with, knowing that God's love and grace is always going to be protecting us. Now we go to John chapter 11, verse 35. Jesus wept. This reminds us that while on earth, Jesus took on all that was human. In this instance, Jesus felt sorrow over the death of his friend Lazarus, who, of course, Jesus then raised from the dead. The two words in that verse teach us that Jesus not only knows what we experience, but how we experience it. Turning next to 1 John chapter 4, verse 16, we read, God is love. Straight and to the point, but not for everyone. This verse reveals to us that the love of God is total, complete, and as his children, ours should be too. Yet there are some who call themselves Christian, but show, let's call it limited love. They withhold their love from someone who's different than them or someone they disagree with. While we all fall short, as Romans chapter 3, verse 23 teaches us, limited love just adds height to your fall. All right, let's stretch things out a bit by going to Psalm chapter 84, verse 11. No good thing does he, God, withhold. Now, this is a fantastic verse to grow your understanding of God's word with. If you're asking in prayer and not receiving, are you truly asking for what is good in God's eye? Is the time right, and are you ready to receive what you're asking for? Further reading and study will get you to those answers. All right, one more. John chapter 3, verse 30. He must increase, meaning God, but I must decrease. What this is saying is to have more of God become more of you, you need to remove more of the old you. Best way to begin that cleansing process is through the study of His Word. So use what I've shared with you today as your start. You may be surprised. You will be blessed.
Thank you for listening today to this best of edition of Issues and Ideas with Chris DeBello. Chris will be back next week with more great conversations and information. Visit our website at issuesandideasradio.com.